This interview is being conducted for Inverkeithing People Making History Oral History Project. My name is Dr Sue Morrison and the respondent is Bill Wilson. This is the 7th of December 2021 and the interview is taking place in Inverkeithing Civic Centre. Thank you very much for agreeing to be interviewed,
No problem.
Bill. Much appreciated.
No problem at all.
For the record, would you please confirm your full name?
William Wilson.
And what is your age or just your year of birth?
75.
Thank you. Where were you born, Bill?
Dunfermline.
And when did you move to Inverkeithing?
When I got married, so that would be 50 years ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I just remembered that.
Would you mind talking a wee bit about your early family?
No, not at all. I had 2 brothers and a sister. I'm the second oldest. My older brother worked in the paper mill along beside me, and then he married a girl from the paper mill. I left school and went to work with the co-op, and then I was offered a job in the paper mill. Came down to the paper mill and worked there for a few years, various jobs in the paper mill, and then they went back onto shift work in the paper mill, and that's when we started working together with my father. He was in a separate area of the paper mill, but it was fun. It was good. It was a good place to work. Good fun with the guys. Oh, everybody. It was like a big family, you know. And excuse me. And that was about as much as I can remember. I like to go. We used to go out quite a bit, and then I met my wife. And then we got married, and I've lived in Inverkeithing ever since. You know, where I live now, as I said, I can actually look down on the paper mill where it used to be, to the exact spot where the accident happened as well. I haven't been back. There's nothing there to see now anyway. It's just nothing there at all. But yeah, I liked it. I liked working there. After the accident, I left the mill and went into other various building jobs.
Could I just take you back to you starting at the paper mill? How did you get the job?
Through my brother, actually. My brother told me that they were hiring, and I just went down and went to the gatehouse where you normally go, and then Mr. Smith, who owned the paper mill at that time, they conducted an interview and said, well, if you want to start, just start. Started in what they called the cutters. It's where they cut the paper into squares, send it up the stairs, and it gets it gets all packed and everything. And I progressed from there to the calendars, which is what puts a finish on the paper. It goes through a series of heated rollers. After that, I left the calendars and went to the reelers, which makes it into great big reels of paper that go out. And then I went back to the calendars again, and it was in the calendars I was working on the night of the accident.
I'll come to the accident in a wee bit, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem.
I'd like to kind of get a sense of your work. Could you tell me, were you given any training when you first started?
Yes, yeah. I mean, you were assigned to what we called a cutter man. He was in charge of setting the machine and everything, and you worked with him, and he showed you all. You know, he took you through step by step, along with another guy who was working on the machine at the time that you were going to take over from. So there was quite intensive training. I mean, it wasn't a difficult job. It was just the setting up was a wee bit different. The guy I worked with most of my time on the cutters, he was a legend in the paper mill. Roxburgh, he was amazing, a great guy to work for. I mean, he couldn't do enough, couldn't show you enough, you know. Then we moved from there, as I said, to the calendars. I was very lucky. I always got good guys to work with. And then I worked with a guy called Davy Prattis, who was really good on the reelers. Again, everyone showed you they didn't hide any secrets. They showed you everything that was there, and it was a fun place to work. It really was. I mean, we used to play football and in between the machines and everything at night time when you were on the night shift. And the foremen were brilliant. You know, the foremen were fantastic. Everybody mixed in, you know. And as I said, that the Saturday nights that you worked as 12-hour night shift. And what you were doing is you were probably on your own job for about 4 or 5 hours, and then the machines had to be stripped, and what they called a wire was a sheet, a very long sheet of continuous wire that carried the pulp to the rollers. That had, and what they had was, they called them a dandy. That was put the watermark into the paper. So they had to be taken off. The wires had to be changed after so often, so that everybody mucked in then. And the more you worked, the faster you worked, you got finished a lot easier, and then we just sat on our backside. Or went to the pub at the door at 6 o'clock in the morning. You know, there was a pub right at the front door, so it was pretty good going. But you did that maybe once every 2 months or so, I think it was. But it was a good shift. You know, you had to be there. I think it was 6 till 6 we worked. But that one I was late, as I normally am. But that was a great place to work. It was fantastic. You know, I mean, it changed slightly when the Smiths sold it to Inverkeithing. I mean, it got a wee bit more upbeat, you know, because they started to make the paper for banknotes, and the security was absolutely tremendous. When you had all the waste paper, you used to go into a box, it was all bundled up, then you had to wheel it away up the stairs, and it got repulped again. But it had to be weighed when you left the machine, and weighed when it went up to the and you had to fill in. Forms were tremendous to fill in, but it was good. It was good. It was good fun. I must admit, it was the happiest job I've had. You know, apart from the electronics I went into.
I've never actually been in a paper mill.
Mm-hmm.
Could you describe each of these rooms for me,
Yeah,
please?
I mean, it starts off up at what they call the hydropulper. It's like a big vat, a big washing machine, and they throw the pulp into that, and it gets mixed up to a certain degree. And if it's going to be a coloured one, the dye has to go in as well. And then it comes from there down to the back end of the machine. The machine is, it's huge. I mean, some of them are really quite big. And as I said, it goes on a continuous belt of wire with different jets and heat and everything under it. Then it hits what they call the dandy, which depends on who you're making it for. Their watermark goes on it. Then it has to go through a series of belts and rollers, and by the time it comes out the other end, it's paper. You know, it's quite a complicated system, but it was good. The problem being that if it snapped in the middle, somebody had to crawl in and try and feed it through. I didn't do that. I wouldn't go, but I was frightened of my fingers. I've seen a couple of guys getting caught, you know, the fingers getting caught in the rollers, you know.
So they were still going?
Oh yeah, I had to keep going. Yeah, I had to because the pulp was still coming down, and it was going into what they called the pit, and the loose paper that was in a certain degree, that went into the pit. So you had to keep it going, and they some of them were excellent with it. They knew exactly how to do it, and then later on you would have to go down into the pit and bring out all the waste paper and that, you know. But it's quite a complicated system. I don't know how they do it now, whether that's still the same way, but it was near the front end of the machine. It was always sort of steam heated rollers, and that then it got at the end the paper came off and got made into big rolls, and then you had a 2-tier system. You had one going with the paper on it, and you had another one ready. So when that one was filled, they had to cut it quickly and wrap it round and get the other one going. You know, it was quite interesting to watch. You know, it was interesting to work in it. It was very, very hot with all the steam, but yeah, it was good fun. It was good, interesting to watch, and some of the guys were so good at it, you know. But I wasn't as good as that, I must admit. I liked the weir machines. I quite liked them better. But I must have spent a good few years in there. I can't remember how long I was in there, but I went back. I left and then went back, but it didn't last long.
So the first time you were there, are we talking around about 1970-ish?
No, well, I would be earlier than that, because I started, I think I was 16. I think I went in, because I was 17 when my father was killed in 64. I stayed for a wee while, then left, and there wasn't just no jobs about, so I went back into the paper mill, but I just couldn't sell, you know. quite an insensitive foreman at that time who wanted to send me over where my father was killed to work. And I says, really? He says, yeah. I said, well, I can't work over there. He says, well, you have to work over there, or there's not a job for you. So I left. And in a way, it was a good favour, because I got in with a squad and did buildings work for a long time. And then I started in Imperial Typewriters at Dalgety Bay. I worked there for a wee while. My wife was working in Bourne's Electronics, and we used to play football against them. And the foreman up there, he said to me, why not come and work for us? So I said, I'll come up and have a look. So I went up, had a look, and started in there, and I was there for 25 years till it closed down. Then I went from there to, where did I go to? Selectron in Dunfermline, Electronics again, and they went bust as well. So I went from there to Simclair, Electronics again, stayed there for a little while. I went back into a company called Semtron, who were actually based in the old Bourne's factory that I worked in for 25 years. It was quite funny. The managing director was showing me around, and I says, "Oh, you've got this area up here." And he says, "How do you know that?" I said, "I worked here for 25 years." He said, "You didn't tell me that." I said, "No." So we worked there, but it was with an agency, and the work dried up. So I was out of work, and I got a phone call from the professional at Petrevie Golf Club, asked me to go and work for him. I says, I've never worked in a golf shop in my life. He says, but you've got the patter. He says, come on. He says, and you know everybody, because I was a member up there. So I went and worked there till I was 69, and then I retired. It was just getting too much. So I've been retired since then. Find it difficult. I found it very difficult to retire, I must admit. We stayed, when we got married, we stayed down in Fraser Avenue, and then a guy that I worked on the building sites with, he come to my house and he says, would you do a swap with me? And he wanted me to move up to Winnie Hill. I says, oh aye, because my wife's parents were up there at that time, and our cousin stayed there too. So we moved up there as a house swap, and then my daughter was born. She would only be about 2 up there. And then we got a phone call one morning saying, would we like to come to the housing department? So we came down, and they offered us a house that we're in now, and it overlooks the paper mill. At that time the paper mill was still there until it got demolished, and then we've been there. We bought it, and we've been there ever since. So it's been, I'm kind of know my way about Inverkeithing now. I didn't know very much about it. People still come and ask you, you're bound to know so and so, or where's this street? Not a clue. I can get from my house to the high street, and that's about it, you know. But it's good. It's quite good.
Can I take you back to the mill?
Yeah.
You told me about the process tape being cut.
Yeah.
What kind of size sheets was it cut?
Well, it was. Excuse me. It was into. Well, you have to understand, it's big rolls, and they come to the cutters, and then the cutters will be given an order to what size they want to be. It could be cut down to foolscap, it could be cut into even bigger, A4, I can't remember the size, but the cutters cut the rolls into that. Then from there, it went up to what they called the finishing house. That's where all the women counted the sheets and put it into the reams and whatever was ordered, and then it was all parcelled up and then sent out. But it was various different sizes of sheets, you know. I was never up in the finishing house, so I just had to listen to my sister-in-law tell me. But they seem, I mean, some of them, when you see old film, there was an old film about it, but you see them working, it's like being in the bank when they count the banknotes, exactly the same, because there had to be so many sheets in a quire or a ream or whatever they were doing. But other stuff was done in big reels and sent out to companies. So about 6 feet in circumference, some of them, you know, depending on who wanted it. Tissue paper was done for a wee while, but not very long. It was too awkward to work with. But It could vary. I mean, if you were on the reelers and doing stuff called what they call boards, this was a very, very thick paper. It took the machine in maybe about 5 hours to roll a roll, but it took us 20 minutes to cut. So we were sitting after 20 minutes, it was great. But they were very good at letting you go and see the various processes, I mean, there was a part in the paper mill where there was the old machines, and they had a guy who worked in there. They called him Tango, if I mind right, and he was amazing. If there was a very, very special paper wanted done, very limited, he did that, He was the only one that knew how to work these machines. I worked with him for a wee while, but the knowledge was amazing. I mean, at one time, if you said you worked in Caldwell's paper mill, you could get a job anywhere in the paper industry. I was going to go out to New Zealand. I applied to go to New Zealand. Had a job at, I'd be 17 and a half then. I had a job with 2 other guys, and a company was going to give us a place to stay and everything, and it was pay for our passage out. They pulled out, and I had to go myself, and then I met the wife, and that was it. So the job got the heave. I just stayed here.
Back at Caldwell's, you mentioned that it was very hot.
Very hot at the machines, because again they were steam controlled. There was steam heating in them. So working in certain areas, it was very hot. My area wasn't bad because we had the paper was cooled and it was ready for cutting where we were. But on the paper making machines, they were very hot. Sometimes the guys having to work in between the rollers, they had to go and check the rollers and everything. I mean, there was quite a space to go between, but there would be about, number 5 machine would be about 3.5, 4 times the size of this room, length and line. From the very end where the pulp came in to the very end where the paper came off. So it was, I think there would be there would be a machineman, assistant, and a couple of other guys, maybe 4 of them on that machine, But they had to be continually watching it all the time, because as I said, if they got a break, they had to dive in, because it was churning the paper out at quite a rate of knots. So if you didn't notice a break, it would be piling up quite high. But it was warm in these machines, but not so much in the other ones.
What did the guys wear?
Just t-shirts, jeans. There was nothing there. There was no. You didn't. You had to. Excuse me. The guys on the machines had to wear clogs for safety reasons and things like that. But we were alright. It was just whatever you had, you wore. There was never any uniform or safety equipment, bar the clogs. There was nobody. You just wore jeans or t-shirts or whatnot, depending on where you were working, obviously, But there was never any set uniform to wear.
Were there any washing facilities?
Yes, there was always plenty of that. The toilets, canteen, everything, that you could have, showers, the lot. It was perfect, I must admit it was one of the best places run that I've ever been in, But especially when it was Caldwell's, because the Smiths brothers were really very, very good, and they pitched in. I've worked with the managing director before. He, on the Saturday night we were doing, he used to come in if we were struggling, and he would give you a hand. He pitched in just the same as the rest of us. Which made it the family business that it was until Inverkeithing took over. As I say, it changed a bit slightly then, but I was coming out of it by that time.
I've not heard about the canteen before. Can you describe that?
The canteen. The canteen was over just by the railway yard, and it was 3 women, I think, if I mind right, and it was fantastic. It was so cheap, and the food was so good. And even the canteen opened on a Saturday night shift. They opened on the night shift for everybody, so it was open on the Saturday night shift. So you just used to go over across there and get your fish and chips about midnight and things like that. It was good. It was a good canteen. Wasn't overly huge, but then they didn't need to be, because you had the pub next door as well.
You mentioned that was manned by 3 ladies.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that ladies were in the finishing room.
Yes.
Were women workers anywhere else on the more kind of dangerous?
No, I think they were just up in the finishing area and the three women in the canteen. There was none on the shop floor. They worked. They did. Yeah, in the cutters where I worked, the machine put the paper at that end on rolls, and it went through a set of rolls, and a guillotine coming down. And the girls at the other end, they had to sort it in to make sure it didn't mix up. And you would always have two girls there, on each of the machines, and there would be 1, 2, 3. God, it's so long ago. I think there's about 5 machines with different people on them, and it was always women at the back. And the guy, like myself, we would be loading the machine, feeding it through, and then changing the blades, things like that. But there was always, I think that was about the only place that I seen the women then, The pulper was all men, the grass plant was all men, the machines were all men. Yeah, it'd be the finishing room that was the women, mainly up there. But because that's where my sister-in-law worked, and that's the only reason I know about the finishing room, because we never ever went anywhere near that bit. But there'd be the women on the cutters, but then there'd be no more women until they went up the finishing room.
Do you remember the pay structure?
Not a lot. I honestly can't even think of what I got for a pay. Because when I left, I went on the building sites, and I thought I was really rich on the building sites because we were getting big money. And then when I stopped working on the building sites, my first pay in Roy type would be £14 a week. And that was me as a supervisor. And then I moved from there up, as I said, up to Bournes, and I almost doubled my wages. So I thought, great stuff, But I can't remember what my pay was in the paper mill. It would be less than that anyway, because obviously when we left to go to the building sites, we went to the building sites because it was more money. But it wouldn't be much. It wouldn't be much at all.
There were 3 shifts, am I right?
Day shift, back shift, and night shift. Yeah.
Did you alternate?
Yes. Yeah. At first, I was constant day shift at first for quite a while, and then we started to alternate, and you had your own shift mates all the time, and then you worked closely with a guy who was coming in to let you away. And how it worked was, if you were, say, maybe getting on a Friday night, and you were wanting to go out, and you were on day shift, and you finished it was 6 o'clock in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, and the guy that was coming in would say, "I'll come in at 12, you just go." And then you would reciprocate for the next guy on the shift. So we worked it that way. It was quite good. The Saturday night shift was always 6 o'clock till 6 o'clock in the morning. I didn't like back shift, 2 till 10. I thought, I hated that shift. You couldn't go anywhere in the morning, and then you couldn't go anywhere at night because the pub was shut at 10 o'clock then days. But 6 till 2 was great because you had all the rest of the day to yourself. I didn't mind that shift at all, but no, 2 to 10, didn't like that.
You mentioned the social scene earlier.
Oh, it was fun, really fun. And we had a thing called, every year the Smiths hired a train, and we went on mill trips. We went to Whitley Bay, we went to Aberdeen. It was 2 of the main ones I can remember. I mean, Whitley Bay was absolutely amazing. We were on the train. Everybody met at Inverkeithing station. We were on the train. Going down was very nice and sedate. Coming back wasn't so good. It was the beer got a hold of everybody, And then you would see, he's out with her and he's out with her, It was so fun. It really was. I mean, everybody knew everybody. Most of them stayed in Inverkeithing, and Cowdenbeath actually was a big area for the paper mill. But it was some of the antics, were really hilarious. But I think I was only ever on 2. I would only be on 2. I can't mind anymore. I went up to Aberdeen and I went to Whitley Bay, but I can't remember much about coming home,
Did the mill close on those days?
Yes. It was actually something, if I mind right, we used to do it at the start of the Glasgow Fair, because we shut down for holidays at that time. Everybody took their holidays in the Glasgow Fair, and I'm sure that was round about the time that it happened. I kind of remember offhand, but can't remember much about them coming back. As I said, you can always remember going, but not coming back.
So did you take supplies on the train?
Oh yes. Oh yes. There was the one thing that stuck in my mind in Whitley Bay was a friend of mine, who shall remain nameless. I saw him coming on the train at Newcastle, and the next thing I saw him coming through the carriages, and he had this girl's bra full of cans of beer. You daren't ask anything. You just couldn't. But there was a lot of engagements and marriages came from them mill trips, I'll tell you.
That must have been a big bra.
Oh yes, she was a big girl. But no, it was good. It was really good. As I say, it was all fun. It was just, there was never any animosity or anything. I can't ever mind an argument, except for that night, because I lost the head that night a wee bit.
Can you tell me about that night, please?
Yeah, I was due to start at 6 o'clock, but I went away to watch Dunfermline. I was a big Dunfermline supporter then. Went away to watch Dunfermline play East Stirling or Stirling Albion. It was one of the two. Excuse me, one of the two. And it was in the Scottish Cup, and Dunfermline won 6-2. And I was a bit late in coming back, and I just got along to my place of work at the Calendars, and Bill Hind, who was my friend at that time, he asked me how the game had went, and I says, "Oh, it was fine. It was a good game." And then the next thing, the alarms started ringing. I says, "Oh, I'm not having a test at the start of the shift." And then somebody else come running through saying that there had been an explosion at the grass plant, or as they called it, the duster. So Bill worked on the pulper, so him and I went away through and up the stairs and over to the grass plant, and you had to go up a big flight of iron stairs. And as I was going up, Harry Westwater came down, who was in charge of the boilers up there, and I says, "Where's my dad?" He says, "I haven't seen your dad." I said, "What happened?" He says, "It just blew." So we went along to where they normally throw the grass into the boilers. Couldn't get in. There was no stairs. So we went back out and round the front, and that's where we found Bill Easton lying on the railway tracks in a really bad way. We got people over to him, and then I said, "We'll go round the back and come over the grass." And when we went into the storage bit, as we opened up the back door, this other guy who had only been there about 2 weeks, I think, he was coming out. And I said, "Have you seen my dad?" He says, "No." I says, "I haven't seen him," because there was only the three men there. So we couldn't get up to where, because the floor had given way. So then the safety officer come and pulled us out. He told us to get away out the road. So I think it was Davy Prattis that come and got a hold of me, and he says, "Come on." He said, "We'll go and get a cup of tea. Leave them to it." I said, "No, I don't want to go." He said, "No, come on." So we went along, and we're sitting in the safety officer's building, and I heard them saying something about they found somebody, and somebody saying, "Have you phoned Safety Officer Fife?" And somebody says, "Well, I don't think it's that desperate yet." And I guess I lost the head. I went out, and as I went out, they were bringing my father's body in. He had went straight down. Wasn't a mark on him. Not a mark on him. The only thing that was different was his watch had stopped when he had went down. I can't mind the exact time, but the watch had stopped. Well, I went and phoned my brother, who was at home, and he come roaring down. But obviously there was no. He just came down, got me. They arranged for transport for me to go home, and the neighbours had all known by this time, But seemingly there was a court case about it. I think it went to court, or did my mother settle out of court? I can't remember. But seemingly the reasoning behind it was the asparagus gives off dust, and it was just that lethal mixture of dust and the air and a spark, and that's what did it. And that was just down they went. It just blew. As I say, Bill Easton went out the way, and he must have fell about 20 feet down, but he was out 30 feet, at least 30 feet. The other guy, how he got away with not a mark on him, we'll never know. Never know what happened to him. But Bill Easton was in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. I think my mother settled out of court for about £3,500 at that time, which was a lot of money to her at that time, But there was, in the house at that, my brother was he still in the house? I think he was, and my younger brother and my sister and myself, But it's quite, I went back, I left the paper mill, and then I was out of work, and they offered me a job back again, so I went back, and then this so said to me, "You're going to work in the grass plant?" I said, "I'm not going to work in the grass plant. My father was killed there." And he said, "Well, there's no job for you." I said, so I walked out, and that was it. Never ever was darkened the doors again. Never went down. I went down, I watched them demolish the chimney and the rest of the buildings go down. And I went down, you can walk from my house down the street and down round by the paper mill. Went down, stood at the gates, but I've never been in since, It doesn't affect me any now. I mean, it's 50 odd years ago now, so it's but you can still, I can still see the paper mill, although there's nothing there. I can still see everything there, and then when you start to think back on things, it's amazing how much you forget, But no, it's quite easy to talk about it now. But that night was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. It was, I felt the blasé from the safety officer. I wanted to punch him, and I would have if somebody hadn't grabbed hold of me, But when you think back, the guy was doing his job, I had never encountered anything like that before. I mean, they were pretty great. No accidents in that place, I mean, their accident record was immense. But that was just the one, and that was it. I can't remember anything else, any other accidents there, any major accident. I mean, you always had the odd fall, break arms, things like that, but major incidents like somebody losing their life, no, I think that was the only one. I might be wrong, but I think it was, because I tended not to get any interest in it after a while. And then, when we got married, I lived in Fraser Avenue, so that's I couldn't see the paper mill. And then when we moved up there, and now to the present house, I look right down onto it, and I'm really surprised that nobody's built on the place. In the days gone by when you came to Inverkeithing, the harbour stank, but it was all the dyes that used to come out for the paper mill. You always knew what kind of paper the mill was making because you could see the tide would be green, yellow, red, whatever, whatever dye they were using, always got pumped into the water. But I'm really surprised that land has never been built on. It'd be ideal down by the waterside,
Thanks very much for sharing all
No
that.
problem at all.
Could I ask you, you mentioned an accident at Wards?
Yes, that was.
Could you tell me what you know of
What
that?
I know of that is only what my father-in-law told me. He worked in Wards, and they used to bring the warships, the tankers, the liners, everything came in, the Mauritania and everything. And he was working on one boat, and I think it was a tanker that the other guys were working on, and there must have been fuel or something left in it, and it just exploded. And I don't know, I've never actually read that. I don't know, I think there was one guy killed, but the other ones were severe burns. And then Wards management came forward and asked anybody wanted to donate skin grafts, and my father-in-law was one of the guys that went forward to donate skin grafts up to Bangor Hospital. I didn't know them at the time. Up to Bangor Hospital, and I'm sure they took it from his thigh, because he always had a funny mark on his thigh. And then they were obviously up at hospital, and they saved the guy's life, So it was quite strange that we got together after that, you know, my wife and I, you know. But he wouldn't talk too much about it, you know. And then we found the old cutting from I think it's the Courier, or the Evening Dispatch, and I've never found out any more about the explosion in Wards. I must have to go into the archive and have a look. But it's strange that there was two explosions so near each other, because you had the paper mill there and you've got Wards just across the water. But I didn't know, very sketchy, and even June doesn't know much about it. She just came across the cuttings, you know. She would only be about 10, I think, then, you know.
It's very generous of your father-in-law.
Oh, there was 4 guys, I think. 4 guys went up to Bangor to. I mean, at that time, I think it was quite a new process, really, you know. But they all knew each other, you know, and the guy was quite severely burnt, you know. But similarly, that the skin graft saved his life, so that was quite pleasant to hear about, you know. But it's just, I suppose it's something you do in the spur of the moment. You know, if it's your workmates, you go out and help them. You know, I must admit, our family got an awful lot of help for people that worked in the paper mill. You know, we had an awful lot of visitors from the paper mill. Management were good. I couldn't fault the management at all. It was just a chance in a million, you know. I mean, probably even more than, the odds were probably more than that, just getting that exact mix, because I mean, it had been going from 1914 was the last sign I had seen on it, after the big fire that they had, and never had anything like that happen before. So I don't know what the odds were.
We're running out of time,
Yep.
unfortunately, because of COVID regulations.
Yes.
Could I ask you just to kind of tell me what are your favourite memories of working at the paper mill?
Oh, definitely the mill trips. Definitely the mill trips. I mean, you looked forward all year to it, and also Christmas time at the paper mill. I mean, the guys would decorate the machines and things like that, you know, and you just had fun, you know, and the management were really good when it come to certain areas like that. The same when you were breaking up for holidays at that time, when we always closed down at that time. The last day was just tidy up, make sure everything was safe. And once everything was safe, they were very good. Good memories of going into the Shore Bar on the last day. I mean, even on night shift, the Shore Bar used to knock on the door of the Shore Bar at 6 o'clock in the morning, and Joe, the Pole who owned it, would open it up. The other memory I've often had was when I worked with my dad. We were on the same shift. We'd go up, and the bakery was over there, and you could just go in and get the fresh rolls and everything at 6 o'clock in the morning, you know. Just things like, silly wee things like that. But definitely the best thing was the friends that you made, you know. I mean, and playing football in between machines with a ball made up of paper, you know, it was just laughable, you know. And as I said, as long as you did your work, the management, they turned a blind eye to things like that, you know. But that's when it was a family business. But then, as I said, when Inverkeithing took over, it changed slightly. But I mean, I wasn't there much for Inverkeithing taking over. But that was great. It was a great place to work, I must admit. I have spent many a happy hour in there. Spent many a bad one, but spent many a happy hour as well, you know. But when watching silly things like when one of the girls was getting married, to dress her up, they had a sort of a gown made up with all the different colours of paper on it, and the parader through the place, and then the guys would throw money into the tin, things like that, you know. It was really good fun. It was. I'd like to turn the clock back to them days. It would be good fun, you know. But it's just, you just got to get on with things, you know. We had to get on with things. My mother had to get on with it, and that was it, you know. But we're lucky. I mean, the younger ones, my younger brother and my sister, they didn't know too much. But it was sort of left to me and my older brother. But he continued to work in the paper mill for a while after that. and then he left to go into building trade and things like that, you know. But then we lost him 3 years ago. He had got cancer, and then my young brother, it was 2 years ago, I think it was. He came off Petrivy Golf Club where we both played. He went home, and his wife had been nagging him to fix the oven door, and he was out to his shed, and she heard a bang. She says, he was handless. He kept breaking things, and she thought, "Oh, what the hell's he dropped now?" And she went out and massive heart attack, and that was him, gone. You know, my sister, she's sort of housebound in Kinghorn now. She's got cancer, but she's also got sort of something wrong with her legs and DVT and whatnot. So she's stuck in the house. I'm the fittest one of the lot. You know, I don't feel 75. I still play golf 3 times a week. I'm back playing darts again because I played a lot of darts in them days. Wasn't bad. It was quite good, but they were good days. They were really good days, and like any other family, we had our squabbles. But you know, I can remember way back before my dad worked in the paper mill. He worked in the railways, and we always got free travel on the railway. So every year the holidays were Blackpool. You know, he always went down to Blackpool. But he enjoyed his time in the paper mill. Yeah, he had good mates in the paper mill. It was good. It was a place that a lot of people wanted to work. You know, as I said, majority of them, I think, wasn't it the majority was from Cowdenbeath area rather than Inverkeithing. Funnily enough, the longer serving ones were Inverkeithing, obviously, but the later ones were sort of Cowdenbeath and Fairland. You know, but good fun. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Go back. I would have turn that clock back. I would have went back again. You know.
Thank you very much, Bill. We're
problem.
out of time.
Yep, I've got to go meet my wife now.
I really appreciate you sharing those memories.
No problem
with me.
at all. It's
I
nice.
am sorry for all your losses.
Oh, it's nice that something's getting documented, you know, because there's quite a bit of history in Inverkeithing that I didn't know about, you know, and I'm enjoying finding out now. My wife's cousin, she used to go to the history thing here until she couldn't make it, but I might look into more things now, you know, then I've got time on my hands. But
Good.
We'll see how things go, you know.
Well, thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Bill. Thank you.